presentation. Okay, it's a pretty picture. Tom was born in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada in 1964, not 1994, he's too young. 1964, as the youngest child of Robert and Avis Oxland. He was the baby in the family with an older brother, Peter, and sister, Deborah. It was a charmed existence that included a lot of friends and, of course, ice hockey. He loved ice hockey. And Tom studied engineering at the University of Waterloo, and he grew up to be big enough to become a volleyball team member in the university. Tom went to Yale University, where he was privileged to study under Professor Punjabi, the famous Punjabi, for his PhD. And here's a picture with Dr. Punjabi and his lab colleagues. And graduation from Yale was a special event for him and also for his family. Here with his parents on the left, and his lovely wife, Lori, and daughter, Sarah, and Rebecca on the right. After PhD, of course, Tom worked in a biomechanical implant industry in Minneapolis, and then he moved to Bern, Switzerland to work in Mueller Institute of Biomechanics, and then he finally moved to Vancouver, Canada in 1997, and became a member of University of British Columbia, the Department of Orthopedic Surgery, where he and Laurie raised their family. And Tom was promoted to professor in 2005, and he is currently the associate head of research at the Department of Orthopedic at UBC. He also serves as the associate director of ICOR, International Collaboration of Regenerative Development, one of the renowned research center for spinal cord injury. Tom is a great teacher, and he has organized and given 42 courses on orthopedic biomechanics to the students at UBC, and he supervised 46 PhD students, 46. And one of them are immediate past president, Peya Lund. And his students are now in the academic teaching positions in a lot of institutes around the world. He organized and involved in 25 continuing educational courses, including AO Spine. And he gave 23 visiting lectures on education, both international and national. And his primary area of research interest is orthopedic biomechanics, is focused especially on spine and spinal cord injury. And he has also special interest in implant biomechanics. And he acquired 70 grants, including those from NIH. And he gave 44 visiting lectures on research, 32 of them are international. And he authored 173 peer-reviewed journal articles. And his team gave 250 conference presentations. And he wrote many book chapters, and the list goes on and on. His current hobby is biking, and coaching a youth volleyball team, and also enjoying the Canadian outdoors. So he's a hobby man too. And he's a great family man, and his number one priority is spending time with his family. You can see Laurie and his 4 daughters. Sarah, Laurie's not daughter, I'm sorry. Sarah, Rebecca, Emily, and Kayla. And also with his friend, Nancy, there you are. And Tom is always smiling. He's a smiling guy. I've had a hard time finding his picture not smiling. He's always smiling. And he makes people around you very happy, comfortable. He's such a guy. And only time maybe you can see him not smiling is the time he sleeps. And I must confess that I have this very significant conflict of interest with him. The other day he sent me an email saying that he found a good place for me and him after our retirement. He said he found a good restaurant, Japanese restaurant in Vancouver, sort of Vancouver. And so I think he's going to be the employee, and I'm going to be the employee. And we can, so I'm thinking of taking a cooking class. Okay. So Tom serves as a member of many committees in this society, and he also served as a secretary. And he's my role model. And he's now the president of our society, directing us to the bright and prosperous futures. So this society won't go without Tom. So it is my great honor and privilege to invite our president to the podium. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our president, Tom Oxland.
Thank you, Kazu, for that very generous introduction. So that restaurant's actually right on Broadway in Vancouver, Charles. So this is an incredible honor to be able to stand here before you, and I'd like to thank the membership for bestowing this honor on me. This is a great society, and a society that I really love, and so I'm just going to try to share with you some thoughts about ISSLS today. Yokoso, ISSLS meeting, for our Japanese colleagues. Before I get going, I'd like to thank our local hosts, Professor Kono and Professor Sakaguchi, for their tremendous effort in putting this meeting together. It's running seamlessly. We're not done yet, but I'd like to thank them for their effort. So my first ISSLS meeting was in Chicago, and 1992, and it was on the afternoon outing that I came down the steps of the boat and I ran into this individual. And for those of you who don't know this individual, this is Professor Alf Nackimson, who was undoubtedly the leader of the society at the time. As I came down those steps, and I was clearly going to be talking with Professor Nackimson, I was met with a combination of excitement, because this was one of the pioneers in the field, and fear, because the day before I saw Dr. Nackimson ask some questions of some of the people on the podium that I didn't want asked to me. And but it was a pleasant conversation. He asked, "Who are you?" and all this stuff. I was telling him that I just finished my PhD with Dr. Punjabi, and we had a delightful conversation. And that was one of the key moments in my experience with this society, being able to, as a young investigator, being able to interact with some of the giants in the field. And so I came from the lab of Dr. Punjabi, and that was a phenomenal experience. And I was really very honored to have studied under him. And Dr. Punjabi always talked about ISSLS as being his favorite meeting. And so it was through ISSLS and through Dr. Punjabi that I met other biomechanical people like Vijay Goel. And we worked with Dr. Isao Yamamoto from Sapporo. And then it was through ISSLS that I had the connection with Professor Lutz Nolte from Bern, Switzerland. And that's what led me to go to the Mutter Institute and work with our past president, Dr. Thea Lund, and get to know people in the European field. That's when I first met Oxland. And so my roles in ISSLS have been varied. I started as the Canadian representative. I was the local host in 2003. I joined the ISSLS Prize Committee. I've been program committee, scientific representative, and then secretary. And as a young person, going through this process, there were a whole bunch of people in the society who really had a big impact. The secretaries, when I first joined the society, were Dr. Ed Hanley and Bjorn Riedevik. Dr. Riedevik is here. And they were incredibly welcoming to me as a young investigator. Dr. Rob Fraser, remember he asked me to be on the ISSLS Prize Committee, and I didn't know if I could actually do that back when he was president. And that was a huge honor, and I think a boost in my career. And Dr. Scott Bowden, who asked me if I'd be interested in being secretary, and I kept on telling him that I didn't think I could do that job because I knew how big it was. And so his support was very, very appreciated. And certainly on the administrative side, Shirley Fitzgerald, for those of you who've been members for a long time, you'll know, and Shirley, well, she was the rock of this society for many years, and then Katarina's filled that role incredibly. And now it's been delightful over the last year working with Fiona. And when I was secretary, I had the opportunity to work with three incredible presidents, Dr. Rajasekharan, Dr. Takahashi, and Dr. Fairbairn. And so those sorts of experiences, a young person coming along, stepping through the society, interacting with all these people, just had a huge effect on me. And so I want to talk to you about ISSLS, and specifically, who are we? And share with you basically my thoughts. And then I'll give you some thoughts about the future. At the very, very outset, in the world of spine societies, I think ISSLS is a little bit different. And so this will be a bit of a theme throughout my talk. And so it's in our name. So we're International Society for the Study of the Lumbar Spine. And so some of that stuff is actually pretty simple. So international, we've got active members from approximately 260 from 30 countries. We've had annual meetings in 40 cities in our 46 years in 22 countries. And we've got an executive committee membership that rotates. And this is where our annual meetings have been. We've been in Kyoto before, and that's where we are again. And for the study, we're a research society. We're multidisciplinary. We really pride ourselves on excellence and quality and ethics. Doing the right thing is important to us. And the lumbar spine, it's all aspects of the lumbar spine, and I guess from yesterday, sometimes cervical. But so low back pain is obviously dominates. Degenerative, trauma, tumor, deformity, those are all relevant areas that we talk about. Our strengths, when I look at this society, I think these are our strengths. That we are international, that we are multidisciplinary, excellence, quality, and ethics. And with respect to the first two, being international, being multidisciplinary, what I see there is I see diversity. And diversity is important. And so I want to talk a little bit about diversity. It's really in our DNA. And so I've gone back to some of the past presidential addresses. So Rob Fraser, and this was published in Spine 2004 in the Vancouver meeting, he talked about the formation of ISSLS. And so on the right-hand side, this is the founder of ISSLS, Dr. Harry Farfan, on the left-hand side with Alan Dwyer. And so I'll highlight some of the things from some of these different addresses. But Dr. Farfan talked about 3 specific guidelines that embraced formulating the ISSLS Society. And the second is that individuals from basic sciences, engineering, and various medical specialties should be encouraged to participate as active members with full rights. So it was there from the very, very start. Secondly, the question of 2D diversity. What is that? So this is published in the Harvard Business Review, how diversity can drive innovation, talking about what diversity is, because we hear about it all the time, certainly those of you who work at universities. So there's inherent and acquired diversity. Inherent diversity involves traits that you're born with, such as gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Acquired diversity involves traits you gain from your experience. Working in another country, tend to appreciate cultural differences, those sorts of things. And the combination of inherent and acquired diversity is something called two-dimensional diversity. And 2D diversity unlocks innovation by creating an environment where outside-the-box ideas are heard. When minorities form a critical mass and leaders value differences, all employees can find senior people to go to bat for compelling ideas and can persuade those in charge of budgets to deploy resources to develop those ideas. This talks about employees, but it can be members of a society as well. I had the wonderful opportunity, my family and I, 7 years ago, to go to Ulm and spend a year in my sabbatical with the wonderful Wilkie family. This is from a few years ago. The kids are a little younger, but Occam and Connie and Dominique and Jenny. And I was fortunate in that year to receive a research award from the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. And then when something like that happens, you get to find, well, who's Alexander von Humboldt? Well, he was a Prussian polymath, geographer, naturalist, and someone who really was way, way ahead of his time. He did all kinds of exploring, but the bottom line at the end is that he was the first person to predict the phenomenon of culture change, because he was already seeing how humans were interacting, different geographies and environments in South America. And so Ockman Connie, a few years ago, gave me this book, which is a recent book written by Andrea Wolf. And in there, she talks about a quote from von Humboldt that without diversity of opinion, the discovery of the truth is impossible. And so there's been scientific literature on diversity. And so this is from a Nature Scientific American article a few years ago, and talking about, sorry, there's a lot of text here, but I think it's important. These folks analyzed a lot of research papers, 2.5 million research papers. And they talked about how US-based authors with English surnames were more likely to have co-authors with English surnames, and Chinese, etc. And it goes on. The bottom, the results hint that scientific research is much like the rest of social life. Studies of social networks find that people eat with, work with, and generally connect with others similar to themselves, a tendency that some sociologists call homophilia. But what they found is that scientific papers that have people with different ethnicities end up having higher citations. It's not a huge number, 5 to 10%, but that's a tangible improvement, showing that if we actually work with people from different places, it makes a difference. Why is that? Again, from the Harvard Business Review. Recent body of research has revealed another more nuanced benefit of workplace diversity. Non-homogeneous teams are simply smarter. Work with people who may challenge you in different ways is a good thing. Diverse teams are more likely to constantly re-examine facts and remain objective. And then it goes on. And so, I didn't actually read an address on how to give a presidential address, but you probably aren't supposed to tell a joke. And when I told my youngest daughter, Kayla, that I was going to tell you a joke, she said, that's a bad idea. But I'm going to tell you a joke, because I think it really summarizes how we might think differently about something. So here you see there's a doctor on the left, and in the middle, a religious leader, like a minister in the middle, and an engineer on the right, and they're out golfing. And they're golfing behind a bunch of firefighters. And the firefighters are blind. And so it's very, very slow, because you can imagine a bunch of blind firefighters playing golf. It takes a little while. And the doctor says, well, this is terrible. We need to try a new stem cell treatment to basically get their vision back. And the minister says, can we bow down and say a prayer for these who are firefighters? And the engineer looked at this and just wondered, well, why don't they play at night? It's just different ways of thinking about a problem. And so we've got this diversity, and that's, I think, a strength in ISSLS. That diversity leads to collaboration. Again, looking back to some of our past presidents, Dr. Bowden 10 years ago, talked about that we need to ensure our future research asks tough questions. And basically these questions may require international collaborations and interdisciplinary collaborations. And so our size in ISSLS, I think we talked about it last year, we talk about it all the time, our size, we get to know each other. We're not a huge society. We have lots of social events. We're going to spend this afternoon and evening together. We're going to get to know each other even better. The notion of international exchange, cross-cultural connections, enhances that collaboration. And again, our past presidents have spoken about this. Professor Kikuchi entitled his presidential address, International Collaboration Beyond the Culture Gap. And he was talking about something that Professor Nackimson said. We must cross both interdisciplinary and national borders. And Professor Kikuchi has embodied that with his study group of nerve and spine, where he brings together young Japanese doctors with international leaders to enhance international exchange and help train these doctors. Dr. Fairbank talked about his collaborations locally with Dr. Urban, but then he also said his most recent collaboration with Jill was part of the big EU grant she did this, and how that made a difference in terms of the broader collaborations. Dr. Takahashi talked about Professor Kikuchi and talking about the notion that competition is important. We all have to compete, but collaboration is more important. And so this is a thread throughout this society. Excellence, quality, and ethics. Professor Kang, a few years ago, showed us and talked about this book, 2016. He talked about quality and the importance of quality, and that it's embodied in our prize papers that we're going to see tomorrow. He talked about gumption. You can just sort of feel it, people working hard to make things better. And he talked about the zen of spine research. And so this is a good presidential address to review, and it's on YouTube, not like the older ones. Ethics. We've heard about ethics a lot in this society, a lot in the presidential addresses. Professor Rajasekharan talked about ethics in publishing. Professor Kang talked about these, something he called gumption traps. And Dr. Thea Lund last year, actually it should have been 2018, talked about character. And it was an incredible presidential address talking about doing the right thing. And our relationship with industry has been very interesting. We've had amazing relationships with industry, but sometimes it doesn't go as well. When I was secretary, talking to one senior industry representative, this is what I was told. This is not always positive about surgical technologies. And I said that's a good thing, because sometimes the answer is not going to be what you want. But I thought the comment was interesting. And so the way I look at it, these are our strengths. And so when you're sitting in positions that I've held along with a bunch of the other executives in this society, you hear a lot of things. So you hear we've got too few surgeons. You hear we've got too many companies. You hear we're too small. You hear we've got too many surgeons. You hear we've got not enough sponsorship. You hear we've got too few Canadians. You hear we've got too many Canadians. You hear we've got too much biomechanics, too little biomechanics, too much basic science, too many of this, and too much of that. And all these comments are great. It's because it's important that we have a dialogue. The one thing that I do hear sometimes is that other societies do it this way. And that's, to me, that's a little bit of my pet peeve, because I think we're a little bit different. And I think we don't have to do it the same way that other societies do it. Not that we can't learn, but we can be different. Because we go back to our core. We're for the study of the lumbar spine. It's basic science, applied science engineering, clinical research, and there's other subcategories as well. We're not a spine surgery society, or a basic science society, or a bioengineering society. We're a hybrid. This is an article, this is when I was doing my PhD. I finished my PhD in 92. I was in New Haven from 87 to 92. And so I cut this out of the New York Times in 1990. And I've actually never done anything with it. I don't know why I had it in my little, like my backpack for years. And this is the first time I've ever used it. So I read this again after this number of years, and there are some really funny quotes, and I'm going to share some of them with you. And again, this just speaks to the different perspectives. So physicians argue that scientists are like cloistered monks and nuns, divorced from the needs of patients, that even scientists who are working in fields related to human disease, such as the study of genes that cause cancer, often regard human patients as little more than sources of cells, blood, and enzymes for their experiments. And it goes on. The physician-researcher focuses on finding treatments for individual patients, and the scientist focuses on the abstract mechanisms of an abstract disease process, says this sociologist from New York University. That can make scientists seem awfully cold and ivory towers sometimes. There's always another hand. For their part, scientists view research-oriented doctors as interlopers in the lab, whose effects on experiments range from annoying to dangerous. They contend that most physicians lack sufficient training in basic research, and that as a result, their experiments are often poorly designed, sloppily executed, and naively interpreted. These are just comments from this article. They're not necessarily my comments or my thoughts, but it just shows that there's different perspectives on this. But I want to say a few words about basic science. Timelines can be long, and we always need to be open-minded on what is clinically relevant. And this little cartoon, I think, summarizes it. And so the complexity of things. If we're looking for answers, sometimes we choose the simple answers, but sometimes we need something a little bit more complex. And Einstein said it the best: everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. And so I found this article that was written by a fellow named Abraham Flexner, who was the founder of the Institute for Advanced Study, which is affiliated with Princeton University. And this is where Einstein actually went to work later on in his career. And he relates this conversation with George Eastman. So if you remember Eastman Kodak, that was the company that was pioneering cameras in North America. But it was on the development of the radio. So this is a conversation between Eastman and Flexner. And so he says, Mr. Eastman, Marconi was inevitable. The real credit for everything that has been done in the field of wireless belongs, as far as such fundamental credit can be definitely assigned to anyone, to Professor Clerk Maxwell, who in 1865 carried out certain abstruse and remote calculations in the field of magnetism and electricity. Maxwell reproduced his abstract equations in a treatise published in 1873. At the next meeting of the British Association, Professor H.J.S. Smith of Oxford declared that no mathematician could turn over the pages of these volumes without realizing that they contain a theory which is already added largely to the methods and resources of pure mathematics. Other discoveries supplemented Maxwell's theoretical work during the next 15 years. Finally, in 1887 and 88, the scientific problem still remaining, the detection and demonstration of the electromagnetic waves, which are the carriers of wireless signals, was solved by Heinrich Hertz, a worker in Helmholtz's laboratory in Berlin. Neither Maxwell nor Hertz had any concern about the utility of their work. No such thought ever entered their minds. They had no practical objective. The inventor, in the legal sense, was of course Marconi. But what did Marconi invent? Merely the last technical detail, mainly the now obsolete receiving device called cohere, almost universally discarded. So this notion of little discoveries along the way eventually leading to something that becomes important is something we can't lose touch with. And so in The Economist, written at the end of 2018, the Director General of CERN, the particle collider in Switzerland, wrote this: Today, society faces many challenges: climate change, energy supply, food security, public health, to name a few. Collaborative science is an inescapable part of the solution to all of them, and history shows that major breakthroughs often come from fundamental research, eventually. She just forgot to list low back pain as part of it. And so we go back to our purpose. The purpose is to serve as a forum for the exchange of information of both an investigative and clinical nature. That's our purpose. This is what our founders said, and it actually holds true today. We need to embrace and encourage basic investigation along with clinical investigation, and I think we're doing that. And so where can we do better? Well, let's go back to our strengths. Let's talk about diversity. So geographic diversity. It's not bad, but South America maybe, Africa, and the executive committee talks about this a lot. And so that's something that we just need to always keep in mind. Are there people in this, in our community who aren't in this society? And that's something I think that we can do better with. Gender balance. Last year we had our second female president in 45 years. So I think we can do better there. Disciplinary balance. I'm only the fourth non-physician to be president. So we've had Margareta Nordin and then two other engineers, Malcolm Pope and Albert Schultz. Collaboration. I think there's some really great things, but I think we can do better. Our small size encourages collaboration, as I spoke about earlier. The single plenary session, I think, is a phenomenal thing. When I had just graduated, I remember giving a talk on a kind of a mundane biomechanical topic. But it was outside that I ran into, it was actually Dr. Punjabi and Harry Berkowitz. And Harry, the late Harry Berkowitz, he started asking me all these questions about this biomechanics session, or about this biomechanics paper, trying to think, is there something in his clinical practice that could be impacted by that? And I think we came to the conclusion that right now, no, there isn't. But that discussion is something that wouldn't happen if we had 4 parallel sessions, because Harry would not have been in the biomechanics session. And so that's really important for collaboration. Our posters, and we've talked about this as well. All those posters, take time in the general posters. Many of them are phenomenal pieces of research. Our social activities, what we do today. is important for us to connect, and it's important actually for our research. Research grants, we try to give out grants, we try to give out awards, and that's something that, again, is important. And the focus groups, which we started a few years ago and have been phenomenally successful. And so I'd like to talk just for a few minutes about the focus groups. They give us a chance to meet with colleagues from around the world on a specialty topic of your choice. But this is a bottom-up initiative. This is for members to propose, not for the executive to tell the members what to have a focus group about. And we've had a bunch of focus groups on degenerative spinal phenotypes, spinal stenosis, stem cells, spinal registries, women epistles, and they've all been met a need, and because our members propose them. But I'd like to focus on two of them, the degenerative phenotypes, led by Michelle, Dino, Joseph, and Bradley. ISSLS gave support last year for the recommendation to stop using the term degenerative disc disease. And this group has moved forward, published an article in European Spine, and are moving forward to do more. And so this has been phenomenally successful, and I applaud the organizers. Spinal stenosis, led by Christy Tompkins Lane and Marcus Mallow, they've been very active to the point of winning an ISSLS prize. So this is really good stuff that's coming from a members initiative. And so back to Dr. Bowden. We must take advantage of our unique brain trust in ISSLS, and as a society find ways to better facilitate these collaborations. And I think these focus groups is a way to do it. We haven't stopped. Just because we've had these certain focus groups moving forward doesn't mean we can't have more. Should there be one on disc nutrition? Should there be one on spinal instability? Should there be one on chronic pain? I don't know, because that's up to you. But my message for you and my question for you is, do you have an idea? And so I encourage you to think differently. Dare to be different. Try to think about it. Is there a big collaboration? Is there a big question you'd like to ask? And what is your most important question? And can the society help you in terms of interacting with this unique brain trust? Is there a new meeting format? Do you want to see a different format to the meetings? Those are the sorts of things that, as members and visitors, we need to think about. And I think we really need to foster young investigators. Because I feel I was fostering. From this time, 1992 to now, I feel it's been a really fun and exciting journey for this society. And so I think we've got a lot to celebrate. I think diversity is good. Diversity can be better. I think quality is high, and quality can always be better. I think there's substantial collaboration, and I think we can do more. And so, ISSLS, who are we? I think we're a little different, and I think that's good. And I think if we look at these problems that we're trying to solve, I think that difference is not just important, I think it's actually vital. So I've got some thank yous to say. I've got to thank my family. My wife Lori, 32 years, and my 4 daughters. And 3 of them are here. It's wonderful to have you. And thanks for all your support. I work at a center called ICOR. And this center is an amazing research center at the University of British Columbia. It's got neuroscience, bioengineering, rehabilitation, and clinical research. And I've had a whole bunch of great collaborations. Engineering, technical people, people from here, like from Vancouver, also outside. And on the clinical side, we've got some great collaborations within our center, and I'd like to thank all those individuals. And then within our society, it's been a joy working with our executive, Dr. Dewan, our treasurer, Dr. Kawakami, our first vice president, and Dr. Chiba, our secretary. It's been a joy working with all 3 of you. And Katarina and Fiona, it's been phenomenal working with you all these years, and it'll continue. And with that, I'm going to close. I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.